Good evening and welcome to Chasing the Facts. I'm your host, Sam Chase, and with us this evening is Mr. Phil Stanway, and I won't get his title right. I'm not even sure you have a title.
I have a bunch of them.
But he has, I'm sure he has many titles. Phil is I'm going to call him a director.
Lead steward.
I'll call you executive director. How's that? Executive director, lead steward of the Chelmsford Open Space Stewards, COOS for short. I'm sure many of you that are watching the show have seen that acronym around town, seen it on Facebook and a number of other places. So Phil is the lead steward, and as we start, as we always do with the show, we ask the guest for a very brief biographical sketch, and I will expect that Phil will do that, and then I'll ask him to lead into the genesis of Chelmsford Open Space Steward. Just briefly let the audience know how you came about, and then we can take it from there. So turn it over to you.
Stewardship was formed in 2005. Mm-hmm. I got married, moved to Chelmsford, and I used to do a lot of hiking up in the White Mountains and disappearing for 2 or 3 weeks at a time. Didn't go down well with the wife. She didn't like the idea of me disappearing in January and February into the White Mountains.
The new wife.
Yes. She said, why don't you see if there's any place to walk locally? And I did. And I started with the lime quarry. And leaving the lime quarry, I was promptly pulled over by a police car and said, what were you doing in there? We know what goes on in there. And that was my introduction to the lime quarry.
And the Chelmsford Police
Department, yes. and they were pretty much right. It was a dump. Mm-hmm. Lots of trash and bottles and horrific things. So I decided to clean it up because it was near my house, and went to the Board of Selectmen and asked if I could clean the place up. And they said, how much? And I said, for free. And it took a while to convince them that I wasn't insane. And we cleared up our first place, and now it is 15 years later. We've been active on 20 different sites in town, and I think we've changed the face of open space in town. We've moved it from the back page of the paper to the front page. And if that's any legacy I have, that's
for those who still read the paper. It's now on the front page.
Scroll down.
So one thing, I think you may have very briefly just skimmed over it, but I think it's important to note that the services that Chelmsford Open Space Steward provide the town are at essentially no cost. In other words, the work that they do not send a bill to the town of Chelmsford. Oh. So it's volunteer work, and a lot of the equipment that they use and some of the other resources that are necessary to do this work are donated by the folks that volunteer for service at the Open Space Steward and others in town. So just wanted to make sure that people understood that.
We think it's about $200,000 a year in value of what we do.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure of it. I'm sure of it.
And some of the staff members have spent as much as $30,000 on equipment, buying tractors and cutters, and just an assortment of equipment. It's pretty amazing. We do such things as turn the town beaches now. Mm-hmm. We have a proper piece of equipment to actually dig them under and clean them as they go. So the town's not always supplying sand to the beaches, which cuts down the expansion of the beach.
So if you rake the sand constantly and bring it up to the surface, you don't have to, it lessens the amount of new sand that you have to.
I don't think they put new sand on the beaches in 3 or 4 years.
Perfect, beautiful.
That's a big savings.
Yep.
And it also keeps it fluffy and soft. We've just finished that with both beaches, and we'll rake out the sludge next to the water, and all the grass we cut. We have people donate as riding mowers, and we fix them, and we put gas in them, and we cut all of Sunny Meadow, all of Hart Pond Beach. Mm-hmm. We have chainsaws and weed whackers, and we clear all the trails.
Do you do any work on the bike trail?
No, that's federal. And there's so much paperwork, and the one thing that just makes my skin crawl is having to do paperwork. Mm-hmm. I'd rather be playing with a chainsaw or a weed whacker than filling out papers.
I understand that.
And we don't really even have any meetings. Mm-hmm. Look, you can just as easily have a meeting while you're digging a hole,
right,
as you can if you sat at the table. And you get weapons.
Well, think of all the corporate decisions that are made on the golf course. So you're absolutely right. You know, right. You don't necessarily need to sit in a boardroom and have that kind of a conversation. So I certainly do remember when you were started, and yeah, 2005, as I recall.
November 5th.
And I remember when you appeared before the select board. So it's been 16 years, almost 16.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm getting old.
You are getting old, but you look the same. I don't remember that you had a beard at that time.
No, this is my COVID beard.
Okay, that's the COVID.
I grew it. My wife.
It does seem a little fuller than it was pre-COVID.
Yeah, I grew it, and my wife said, I like it.
There you
You're
go.
never shaving off, and now I'm going to be wearing a beard.
And look at all the money you save on razor blades and shaving cream. So there you go.
Yeah, but then she gets to put the sharp thing next to my throat every couple of
Uh-oh.
weeks.
Well, that's what you call trust.
Right.
Okay. So what has happened, Phil, in my observation, is that, and as you alluded to just a minute ago, you started out small, but you've expanded, and you've added the number of properties and parcels and so forth that is now under your unofficial, I guess, stewardship.
Right.
And I can think of only one instance when you actually went to town meeting and actually asked for some funding, and it was a nominal amount, as I recall.
It was, we thought it was going to be continuous because a lot of times, especially with a site like Sunny Meadow, Sunny Meadow collects taxes from the
Right.
from the farmers who are there.
Correct.
And we have to maintain the roads and the grass and everything like this. So we were hoping that some of that money could be returned to maintain the property. Well, it couldn't be. So then we went to the town, and it was only 1 year. Well, you think just the fencing alone around that place.
Now, did you put forth a warrant article? How was that done? I don't
That was done
remember.
by Diggs, put that forward together, but it said it could only be for a single year.
Okay, but presumably it could be done every year.
Yeah, we're real Yankees. So we can manage things pretty well, and when we ask for the community for some donations, they come in.
Okay.
We get tools, and I get lawnmowers, or people have dropped off gas cards, or people have dropped off Dunks cards, or people have donated money, which you can send to the town of Chelmsford COSS account, and all the accounts are still held by the town, and you can see every receipt for everything we've ever been reversed from back to 2005.
That's good.
And you'll be surprised, it's nails, it's shingles, it's wood,
Right.
it's gas. There's been no big expenditures. We are bringing back our annual fundraiser, which is the blueberry pancake. We take parlay blueberries, which come from town. We take cooking buckets, maple syrup, which is made in town, and Brick House hosts it, and all the money from the pancakes goes to us.
And when is that?
That will be, it'll be in July this year. We're working on the final date, like the 10th to the 12th, and that covers our events. We're having at least 2 free concerts in July. One is a big barbershop quartet, and the other is a folk player.
And that will be held where?
That'll be at Sunny Meadow. We're finding out the exact dates. The barbershop is fixed in for July 13th, and I think the other one is July 9th. And they're going to be free events. Just bring a lawn chair and a picnic basket and listen to some free music
So
in a
where
great
where
place.
will people? So you're going to do advertising probably on Facebook anyway.
Yeah,
Any
Facebook
any
and-
other venues?
Yeah, as we get closer to the date.
Okay.
And we're just starting to nail this stuff down now.
Right.
Because the COVID opened up and we're super busy.
Well, it's good because I think people are a little bit disappointed in the fact that we're not going to have the traditional 4th of July celebration that we usually do, although there is some talk of putting together a smaller parade. But I mean, the summertime is a time when people like to get outside and do these kinds of things. So those 2 events that you talk about, I think, will be welcome additions to the summertime party spirit, if you will, and it's all for a good cause.
And they'll-
Especially the breakfast. I always enjoy
Yeah, that's a big
breakfast.
fundraiser for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah, and Brick House has been very good in accommodating that, and hopefully they'll keep their tent up this year. So
We'll see.
Yeah,
But the
so-
nice thing about that event is we provide the pancakes, we provide the blueberries and the syrup,
right.
and they give 100% of it, which is very unusual.
Really? So
yeah.
whatever they take in,
Whatever
it
they
gets
take in
turned
on
over to
pancakes
you?
gets turned over to us.
That's-
So that makes a tremendous boost to it, and it's probably
Yep.
the biggest fundraiser of the year. We're also doing the Scarecrow Festival again this year, the Land Trust, which I am one of the directors of. And that'll be the same one where we'll give out the free hay and the stands, and you stick them up in the field, and that might be a little earlier this year.
You just mentioned the land trust. I wonder if you could just take a minute or two just to help people understand the difference. I mean, we've talked about Chelmsford Open Space Stewards. We know what that is. But we have the Land Trust, and we have the Conservation Commission, which is a town board. So all three of those entities are involved in some way with maintaining land, open space. In the case of conservation, their mission, of course, is regulatory. But could you just take a minute to explain, from your perspective, what the different missions are for those?
The different flavors.
Yes.
Yeah, most people don't really care. They want to see this is a nice piece of open space and they want to walk across it. But there's actually several different entities in town that own land in town. The Board of Selectmen controls the farms, which is Watton Street, Sheehan Farm, which is where the Parleys grow their strawberries, and Sunny Meadow. Conservation controls, and the town Board of Selectmen control the two beaches too.
Right.
So they have those properties. Conservation controls reservations and preserves in town. And they are, there's 9 reservations. The big ones, of course, is the Cranberry Bog, the Wright Reservation, Thanksgiving Ground Forest. Those are the larger ones. And then you have the Chelmsford Land Conservation Trust, and that's a mouthful that you can never get right. And they control, in 1960, they were formed when the town was starting to expand and buy up property like crazy. A group of the older members of town got together and said, we need to preserve certain things. And so they formed and they donate, and land was donated and the land trust was formed. The biggest one is the park behind the library. Bartlett Park.
Yes.
And then right across the street, there's Bartlett Woodloch, which is 60 acres or something. And that
Which
goes,
a lot of people just don't even know about.
no, it's one of those secret
Yeah.
places. The trail system there we're trying to upgrade, but there's some strict regulations on it. It always supposed to be relayed. Left is raw trails and things like that. They were really concerned that would change the look of it. Just to get the regular grass cutting took 3 years of talking backwards and forwards. So should it be cut or shouldn't be cut? Should it be a meadow or not a meadow? So either those type of things. We worked it all out, and now it's an absolutely fabulous park and gets a ton of use, and is the flagship.
It's beautiful, and we've my wife and I have walked some of those trails back there, and it's just it's hard to describe. I mean, you know, people have to understand Chelmsford is a big town. Folks have lived here a long time, and many think it's a small town. We're the 17th largest municipality in the state by population.
Right.
Big town, over 36,000 people. We took almost a 1,000-person jump in the last census, okay? But the town is big enough, I think, what are we, 26 square miles, something like that?
Something like that. I just know it's 1,000 acres of green space.
Okay, I was going to ask you about that. 1,000 acres of green space,
Right.
okay? And a lot of it is what we've just been talking about, stuff that is actually being managed and maintained in some fashion or other. And if you just want to get away for a Saturday or a Sunday and not leave the town, you can do it.
Yeah, you can walk 30
Okay.
miles of trails.
And we haven't talked about the bike trail, which of course is not part of your portfolio, but still, it's another outdoor resource that offers, you know, folks a chance to get out there, get some exercise, some fresh air. You can bike, you can walk, you can rollerblade.
But
you
a lot of our open spaces hang off the rail trail too.
Yes,
Or we build connections to them. So you know, if you ride the rail trail, it's nice. You know, you can look in most of the way. You can look in someone's backyard for a little bit of this. But then you can go off, and then you're in these big open spaces.
oh, it's just the way it's laid out is perfect, you know. And like you say, it abuts some of these other areas. So you've given us, I think you've really just given us essentially the inventory of the open spaces in town. You said a little over 1,000 acres.
There's
Okay.
also the gun club that owns a big chunk.
Yes.
There's the church that owns 25 acres. There's the Kent Farm private farm that's 30 acres. There's little pieces there, the Parley Farm of 40 acres.
Right.
So there's these little areas of green around town.
So the private spaces are a little bit different in that they're private property, and there may or
Correct.
may not be certain kinds of access. that are available to those, because again, private property is private property, but the land that you're talking about that's under your stewardship and land conservation trust, what are some of the restrictions, if any, for people to go on those properties? Are there time restrictions and just
The restrictions, they change by who owns it, but on a nutshell, no cooking, we don't want fire.
Right.
No drinking, we don't want to deal with the hassle. No being a jerk. That includes too throwing trash.
That's a pretty broad standard.
Painting stuff on the trees, dumping trash, that type of stuff. But really, you know when you're doing something you shouldn't. Right. If you won't do it in your backyard, except for cooking and drinking, don't do it there. Because there's likely to be some old guy with a gruff-looking sheltie sneaking up behind you saying...
And a ferocious attack dog.
Yeah, saying, get out of here. But people have been very respectful. At Sunny Meadow, we ever had scouts on the property all during COVID. COVID, you think people were locked in. No, they weren't. It was the busiest season we've ever had. We had people all over the trails.
Talk a little bit about why you had the number of scouts you did.
Well, scouts were really restricted on where they could go. If it was outside the town, none of the other towns would pretty much allow them. So they wanted to have meetings, but they wanted to have meetings outside. They wanted to have meetings where they could socially distance. And scouts have their own COVID rules, which they were absolutely strict to. And Sunny Meadow provided 21 acres. So we could have 1 or 2 troops there. They could keep their social distancing. They could still get their merit badges. There was a porta potty there that the town actually paid to have cleaned for 3 months later than what we did at a big cost. And it provided an oasis for the scouts to still meet. And we had scouts there. We had scouts advisors there. We had the area group of scout advisors were doing a training seminar on how to do campouts. And they were bounced from where they were going to be. And I got a call the night before that said, well, we bounced out of our place. Do you know any place we could meet? And I said, well, Sunny Meadow. And I said, what paperwork do I need? I said, none, you're scouts. I'll see you there tomorrow afternoon. I'll make sure everything's all set up for you. And they were there for 2 days in all these different towns. And the big feedback they got, because I finally heard it, was, why don't we have a place like this in our town? And that was people from Drake and Westford and Carlisle. So it's really that's a big statement on what it's becoming. I think in some ways it's becoming more of a social town area than even the town center, with flower gardens and pollinator gardens and the community gardens and scouts and 7 working farmers there and people walking in the bike trail.
As you said, it's a working farm area.
Yeah.
Okay, you can actually see what's going on if you want to study that or learn something about it. And it's fascinating, folks. When I was a teenager, I spent 2 summers working on farms. So I'm not an expert, but I do know something about it. And I've always said that farmers are the smartest people in the world. They absolutely are, because it is a combination of a mental and a physical job. Right. Okay? And your mind never shuts off. No. If you are an active working farmer. And I don't care whether you're a truck farmer or you're a dairy farmer, it doesn't matter, okay? It's 24/7 and it's 365, because even in the wintertime when you haven't got crops growing, you're still working, okay? And it's a tough job. And trying to preserve the farmland is, I think, a very noble mission. And a lot of towns there's nothing in place. I mean, I grew up in the town of Concord. I was born in 1947, and until I was in my late 20s, we still had a number of big, and I mean big by New England standards, big working farms. They're all gone. Yeah. They've all been sold off. There's a couple, but they're more like Phil Jones type operations, okay? They all have been sold off for house lots. But
the model that we've been using at Sunny Meadow is micro farmers. So these are farmers who are farming 1 acre, 2 acres. And that way, if one drops out, another one can pop in. And we just had one of the farmers, with the big one with the greenhouse and the lights, he closed down. And 3 new farmers have come in to fill the gap. And they might actually have a pop-up farmers market on the property.
That's a good point, because we've we lost that to COVID, right? And that, I haven't seen anything about starting up a farmer's market in the town common. It was done, what, on Thursdays?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this one here will be, because we have so many farmers on the property, they're allowed to sell their produce on the property. So we think,
Well, that makes sense.
We're kicking around an idea of one day a week when they've had their CSAs and when people buy, CSAs when people buy in for a partial season. When they have that pickup, they might also be selling other produce. And with 7 different farmers, it might be kind of nice if it's all grown right on the property.
That's amazing, and it's great. It's great that that tradition is being kept up, and unfortunate that a lot of other towns where farming was until 40 or 50 years ago, a big tradition and a staple of the town is just gone. And once it's gone, it's gone. I mean,
it's difficult to maintain and easy to let go.
Now, tell me a little bit about Red Wing. Does that figure into any of this at all?
Red Wing is a conservation site.
Okay, that's conservation.
Conservation and farming are opposed to each other.
Right, exactly.
One is to take the land back to nature, and the other is to
work it.
Right.
Right.
So Red Wing Farm is a farm in name only. But the other farms, Sheehan, Watton, and Sunny Meadow, they're actual farmers with
working
actual
farms,
lease farms on there. And you don't make enough money. A lot of the times the leases are pennies.
Right.
And a lot of the surrounding farms towns are starting to pay their farmers to farm because they just can't make the money, which is actually undercutting our Chelmsford farmers.
I understand that, but the federal government's been doing that since the 1930s. So,
Yes,
you know,
they don't
so
do it.
you've got the model, right?
Yeah, but you don't have.
Yeah.
It's the new one we have, New Max Farms. He's going to be He's growing chilies with a farmer who's out of Lowell, done the same place, and they make hot sauce.
Do you hear that, folks? A Lowell farmer.
Well, no, he farms a little in Lowell and a little in here. But Lowell has some farms area.
There are open spaces in Lowell.
Yeah,
you know.
They planted over 1,000 chilies were planted, and then
there you go.
We put an offer out for people to come down and help.
There you go.
And we planted chilies all day, and he made a big chili lunch, and it was kind of fun.
So before I ask you about development, which I'm going to do, because I want to save a few minutes for that, if people want to volunteer to work on open space, how do they do that?
We're always looking for victims, volunteers.
Do you have a web page?
Yes, we have a Facebook page is what we use.
All right.
Chelmsford Open Space Stewardship. You'll see events posted all the time, and it'll say open to the public. If you want to join our regular crew, just swing down, especially at Sunny Meadow, that's our hub. We need people to cut the grass. We need people to walk the trails. If you do walk trails and you see a problem like trash, trees down, bridge needs repairing, all we ask is that you shoot a picture, post it to our website, and generally we'll have it fixed within 24 hours or 48 hours, depending on what day of the week. A crew will see it posted there, and they just get together and do it. So we're a virtual organization using modern technology.
Well, that's good. And you have a technology background, so that meshes as well. So let's take 5 minutes or so and talk a little bit about development projects in town, because there are two, as we know, there are two kinds of development. There's redevelopment, which means you take an existing piece of land that has a building on it and you rehab it. That's one thing. And then there's the other kind, which is a little bit more problematic. You take open space, something that is basically undeveloped land, and now you propose to put some sort of a building on it, okay? And we've had a few recently, and you've been, as an open space guy, you've been rather vocal on a couple of these. So,
yes.
Would you care to bring us up to speed on what you think we may be facing going forward?
I've been vocal on Acton Row project, the condos, because the Bartlett Park. And that was originally 64 units and 4 stories.
Which is right there.
Right there, it's right in the park. And all the pictures were of that developer showed pictures from the park to the condo like it was the front yard.
I remember that, yes.
And now it's down to 25, which is something we could probably live with. But even at that, just to protect the park, We're about to rebuild the stone wall, which is a $130,000, $140,000 project, to rebuild that huge stone wall on 27. And we're going to have to put a fence on the top, and we're going to have to take the stairs out for liability reasons now. Because if you have houses right across the street, you don't want people running across 27, kids running across 27, to think they can, right into the park, because they're going to get killed. There's 27, I take my life in my hands crossing that street.
That's a very problematic intersection.
Yeah, and then you have you have an 8 to 9 foot drop off that fence, stone. So we're going to put a fence up, and the steps are stone, and someone's going to slip on in the sewers. So there's those type of issues we have to do. As the development increases, we have to protect the green space. So the 9 Acton Road, I was very opposed to.
Well, as you said originally, and I remember I was at the select board meeting with the initial proposal, and the man proposed 64 units.
Yeah.
And I think I thought in the back of my head, this man must be smoking something, because there's no way in the world, even if you don't really know much about it, if you know the site and you know what's there now, it's almost impossible to visualize that number of housing units.
Yeah, but then they tried the thing where we're connected to a green space. You can go through Bartlett Woodlot,
right,
which is like a 60-foot drop off the side of a cliff. And those crazy things. So that one I wasn't happy about. Let's see, which other ones were I not happy about particularly?
Probably the center one that was just defeated.
The center one, I just thought it was ugly. I'm not very happy because I'm not sure how they did it, because I think it had gas station out there and the dry cleaners. So I'm not sure what's in that soil underneath, or if they looked at the soil. I think they might have looked at the wetlands, but not the soil. There's a reason they didn't build something on that, for obvious reasons. So that was brought up, that there might be something in the soil, and that was missed. So they look at that. The little island in the center, I think, should be kept a green space.
All right, is that what's the ownership of that currently? Do you know?
It's the mobile station, and the local guy who owns it.
All right, so it's a shared thing. It's Mobile Oil, and then probably Rudy, who used to be in the station. He's now.
That's one area that I think it'd be nice to keep a green space in the center, because we just don't have much in the center.
Well, I've heard people talk about converting that into parking, which I don't see any way in the world. I mean, first of all, I would not favor that, but I don't even see how it could be done.
Well,
if
you've been in town for a long time, long enough as I have, you know that parking lot would immediately become the cut through it was once
well,
before.
Of course it would.
And so it was just crazy. I mean, and now even when there's a reason those big boulders that keep on getting put there, because as they put the rocks on, bigger and bigger things were going over until they got the big rocks now. And you kind of like the Berlin Wall on that road. It's crazy. But that's way in the center. But reasonable development I have no problem with. I do think we have a lot of large buildings, and I think some of them are extremely ugly. The one at Hunt Road and 110 looks like it got it from eBay from a 1970s design with the colors, and that one I don't. But some of them are okay.
Right.
It's a case-by-case basis. I'm not against any development, but losing land that has been open for 100 years, 150 years.
That's problematic.
It's irreplaceable. When the Parley Horse Farm, when that gets built out, which it probably will.
Okay, now you're telling me something I don't know anything about that. Is that?
The big fields out there.
Okay.
Because that's not protected. That's probably going to get built out.
Okay.
Into houses. That'll be a shame. The Kent Farm will probably go. The Gumet property will probably go. Anything without a conservation restriction on it. And that's why we need to put conservation restrictions on things.
Right.
Just to preserve them, because there's just too much money on the table for these open spaces.
Well, unfortunately, there isn't a better example of supply and demand. They're not making any more land, okay? So that is a problem. And so it just becomes more and more of a scarce resource situation. Phil, the time went really quickly.
Wow.
So I'm very happy that we had you on. I think we've given the community some good information to kick off the summer season. COVID is abating.
Thank the Lord.
Okay, and get outside. Thank
Yeah.
you very much.